And good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another live Xanadu Gallery online critique group session. Today is Wednesday, January 26th, 2022, and we're glad to be back here with you on a Wednesday morning. And to jump right in and introduce our featured artist, Gay Cox. Good morning, Gay. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm a bit nervous, but pleasure.
Well, we'll set your mind at ease. We're going to have a great conversation. And many of you will recognize Gay. She's a longtime member of the critique group and, in interest of full disclosure, also a member of the Art Business Academy. So Gay and I have a long-standing relationship and have worked together for quite some time in terms of developing her approach to getting ready to go out and present her work to galleries. But I'd like you all to get to know Gay a little bit better. So Gay, let's start, if we can, by getting just a little bit of background. Folks might notice that there is a little bit of a Texan accent there. No, it's not quite Texan, is it, Gay? Tell us a little bit about your background and where you're from and where your studio is located now.
Okay, well, originally I'm from England. Now you can tell I'm getting very English. And that's where I received my initial art formation. A rocky start because nobody thought art was worth doing. So every time I wanted to do it, I was redirected. And then finally I got into college and I took art and education so I could teach at least. And they thought I was actually doing something responsible.
And where did the initial interest in art come from? Was art a part of your family life?
Well, I think what I'd say is that, and I think this is why I'm such in and out of landscape, creation around me, everything was wonderful. Even as a child, I remember singing to birds and trees, anything that would listen, just making my own little songs up and going along, and did a lot of sort of drawing and painting, but was told, you can think, so don't do this. So the next gift they found out I had was music, but they wanted me to play an instrument and not sing, so that went by the board. And then they realized I could teach. But in the 60s in England, you were told, those who can do and those who can't teach. So I, three gifts and I'm sunk. So anyway, I managed to bring them both together, got my first degree in English in England in education and art, and was doing landscapes on constructed sculptural surfaces, believe it or not, when I left college then in the late 60s, okay? And then I decided that all I was doing was seeing everything as a potential painting. And it's a warning sign. I do believe you have to live first, and your work should come out of your life, okay? It should come from what you do, what you believe, what you are, who you are. So I stopped dead, right? And I actually left the country and I went and worked in a community in Switzerland. What's not to like, I say, beautiful. But I didn't paint again, not really. Some little drawings until the mid 80s here, 82. After I'd got married and we'd had our first child, I'm out in America and I moved to America and been here ever since. And a friend of mine who was a potter, every summer she would have life drawing. She'd get a model in and we'd come in and do life drawing. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I had a sort of spiritual aha moment. And that was a sense that, am I going to paint or am I just going to play at painting? And after a big discussion in our family, because it was quite a financial burden, I then went back to school, to the Museum of Fine Arts School in Boston, which is now, the school itself is now part of Tufts, but then it was part of the museum school, the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And I got a year's credit for just the drawings I've been doing of life. And then I used my gourmet magazines to paint it, things, pastels from the pictures in there. I had a corner in my living room and of course couldn't use anything too poisonous because I had a child, for heaven's sakes. Can't kill your children to do your art. Mm-hmm. So after that, I went full time for 3 years and graduated with my diploma in painting and drawing. It was wonderful. I was able for 3 years to do no academics except occasional papers and concentrate on the actual doing of art. And that's really what brought me right full circle and made me realize I had to keep going. But of course, I would work 4 days a week at something else to help the family and pay the bills, and 1 day a week in a studio painting frantically. So that's really the lead up. It was interesting, the art I chose to put in today to show you, it's quite a breadth in the sense of where I'm coming from. But the interesting thing to me was in the middle of all of this, that it was going on in the early 90s, now we're into the early 90s, I also put together a huge body of work over the next 15 years for my installations, which are nothing to do with the Art Business Academy. When we first started, I said to you, what am I going to do with all this work? Because that's the work I concentrated on. But of course, I'm not selling it. It's still housed with the Studio for Art, Faith, and History, and still can be used. But all those paintings, nearly 90 of them, still belong to me. And that's why I began to introduce the idea, perhaps translating the Psalms that I was doing there into songs, which I just have 3 on my website now. Is this helpful? Am I going in the right direction?
No. This is a good introduction and kind of brings us up to the point where we start to look at your work.
Right. One of the issues for me was I'm an ordained deacon in the Episcopal Church, and somehow I've been trying to bring worlds together into my art so I don't feel so fragmented. So that's partly what I was looking for help for.
Yeah, so that takes us into the work, and let's pop over and take a look at the pieces that you submitted, and just walk us through a little bit, maybe Gay, about kind of both your inspiration and where the work is coming from, kind of maybe the underlying themes, and then also maybe tell us a little bit about the technical aspects of the creative process, how you come to compose and create the work.
Well, this is one of my most recent. And as you can see, I was using egg tempera, and I do not use it the way they did in the Renaissance. When you use an old style, wonderful medium, remember you're in the 21st century. You have things they never had. I don't have to do these tiny little brush strokes, so I do these big sweeping ones with it. And, I just make my own. There's lots of good recipes on the internet. But I put this in because ostensibly it's one of the simplest paintings I've ever produced. The layering came in the colors, and it came out of my breakfast, literally, with the dawn. I'm blessed right now to have a kitchen that looks at the dawn and the sunset. And this light is just stunning. I'm an early morning person. I'm up at 6. I see all the dawns. I get up a little early in summer so I can be with the birds. But so what I was trying to capture was some of this glowing nature, which you blink and it's gone to another color practically. And then I was trying to figure out how to bring things into this light, because I didn't want to treat the colors as if they were a backdrop to a play, which is what I think one tends to do. I'm working on trying to bring the objects, as it were, into the light, which is what's happening to them. So the light comes up, shines on the objects, you can see them, but we're surrounded by the dawn. When we're sitting there in the light, the dawn is lighting us up. I don't know if it's too esoteric, but that's what I'm struggling with now. So I enjoyed working with tempera. Now, this marks the beginning of another series, which is further back, but I did at least 7 paintings in this. So this is a Gardens of Eternity series, and this is the first one I did. And I wanted to imagine a place where everything could grow together, and it could be anything you wanted. It could look any color you'd like. And I imagined a garden of shade and water with fanciful things in it. You can barely recognize the shapes, but there they are. This is so this marked the beginning of the series, and I always paint in series of Gardens of Eternity in oil, which is really still my favorite medium.
And we see the scale of this piece. This is a 4 by 6 foot panel. Would that be fairly typical for how you're working and how you're thinking about composition? And then you mentioned installation pieces. Kind of talk a little bit about your approach to kind of the magnitude of the work and the scale of what you're creating.
If I had my preferences all the time, I do nothing but large paintings. This I consider average. This is an average size for me. I have in my possession still works that are 6 by 6 feet. I'm happy, bigger the better. There isn't a canvas I couldn't cover given enough time. There's no problem. And I actually naturally am inclined that way. But occasionally I'll paint small just to remind myself, well, you're just avoiding the issue. So to me, the first one you saw was small. It was 30 by 40 inches.
So I got to stop you there, because you say it's small, 30 by 40 inches. And for some of us in this group, we'd be saying 30 by 40 inches, that's twice as big as the largest piece I've ever done. And, and so it really is interesting to kind of see an approach where you are thinking more on a big scale and approaching the canvases, thinking about that expanse that you're going to cover. Talk a little bit about the painting process, because we see a lot of movement and motion and action in the work. But talk a little bit about that process.
Okay, I'm going to just speak to the one you've got up now, so that'll help me focus.
Sure.
This is seeds, and you have to understand, I do a lot of thoughtful pre-painting stuff. So I have a lovely book that shows me enormous quantities of seeds as they are. And then I close it and I put it to one side and I reimagine them all coming out together. I wanted abundance. I wanted to give us a sense of seeds in motion, seeds flying, seeds in water. Just everything is seeds. It's just very, very fertile. So I will start with great swathes of paint and color. And I don't have in my mind each little segment here. But in my mind, I do have a sense of what I want to convey. And I am thinking of the shapes and the sizes and the kinds and the movements of the objects that I'm bringing out. So that's how I approach it. And then I leave it for a while and I do another one, because the worst thing I can do is 6 paintings on one surface. And so I usually have several going at once. And then I come back and I layer in the next thing. And in the case of the square ones, and why I like squares, is I turn them around until I'm satisfied that I now know the angle of the main thing. So this is supposed to be seen at this angle. Did that help?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And one imagines, I can't help but imagine that there is some paint flying around the studio as you're working. This is a physical activity that you're undertaking.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I have to squint a little to see in the background, but I think I see some paint on the walls and.
Oh, yes, yes. The floor's terrible. Paint everywhere.
Yeah, and so there are some elements of action painting in your work.
Yeah, I don't actually throw in it, although I have one painting I did about light. I had sparkles in it. Kids love to see it. Oh, look, you've got sparkles in there. That one I did throw things at. But by and large, I'm a pretty messy painter. Not on the surface. I am quite particular there, and I don't mind. I paint wet on wet in oils. I've learned how to do it. I mix colors even on the canvas as I'm working with them. And the other thing is that I don't have, isn't that a sense of the perfect painting? That is not in my mind at all. And I allow what I believe is the painting to speak to me. I have an idea of what the, are you still there?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, good, because I couldn't see anything for a minute. This is the Persian Garden. I researched what classical Persian gardens were like. I put the peacocks in because they're symbolic of the Persian throne. I just did all about it. I had the kind of fruits and flowers and everything else in this water, which is so essential to the cultures of the desert nations. And that is how I do it. That it just comes together and finally I say, we're done.
Yeah, so talk then a little bit about, you've mentioned reference material and kind of looking at the work. How much work are you doing ahead of time in terms of thinking about composition, and how much of that's just happening on the canvas as you work?
I think the composition, I would say, this is a single view, so I knew where we were going view-wise. Sometimes I'm not sure because I'm trying to get us to go up into something. Here I know which angle we're coming at, and I had the formation of the actual psalm, which was Psalm, not Song 50, and I was working on it. And therefore, but there's an element here of things inside something coming out. When I was doing these particular ones you see now, I'm working with old things. My hope was that I could take old things, partially done paintings, bits and create something new with them. And then additionally, what I did was I went back into books about medieval and late medieval manuscript painting. And if you ever seen them, you'll see these edges. And in the edges are all sorts of interesting things going on, pertinent to the painting. So I will gloss out the edge and I'll go back in with some symbolic plants and things like that. So that's how I work with that one. Does that help? Helpful?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And then let's take a look at just kind of format. And I think this is an interesting photo to see, to start to give us a little bit of sense of scale and context and the effect that the work has as we're experiencing it in the world. And talk just a little bit about your thoughts on format and what your approach has been. We're seeing the work here, and I think I've got another photo from the side view.
Right.
Unframed, box stretched canvases. Why
Mhm.
that approach? What's your thought process in terms of how you want to present the work?
Well, because quite most of my work is large and it's on canvas, it's counter everything in my financial state to frame it all. I have framed some of the 36 by 36 inch ones. However, I do finish the edges. They're either going to be plain like the canvas, no matter how messy that edge is, they're finished. These large ones here happen to be 2.5 inches thick, deep, actually. It's quite a substantial canvas. And around each of them, this one is white around the edge. And then others might be gold because that's the predominant nature of the picture. But they are excellent, clean that way. Okay. I have in some of the smaller ones, because they're on a lighter kind of stretch, I think they'll have to be framed to give them more substantial and to protect them. I am concerned about the egg tempera on canvas, so I may frame those.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting question and conversation. I don't know that we've necessarily spent a lot of time in these sessions talking about presentation as much and the question of framing and not framing. And I think it's kind of interesting to think about what you mentioned, the dynamic of the financial necessity of not framing, right? That can be an initial impetus to look towards other alternatives, because you're right. I mean, it's true for any artist as you're thinking about presenting your work, that the question of framing is going to come up. But certainly as you get larger, it becomes a more impactful question. And, I think that as we look back to, what was going on in mid-last century art in terms of the abstract expressionists and Pollock and de Kooning and, kind of working up into these large scales and becoming abstracted. I think that there was partially a thought process of, I don't want to constrain my work by framing it in or conforming to the academy and the classical thought of how a work of art should be presented. But there was also certainly going to be a question of the affordability of framing. And so I think there are some pragmatic considerations that come into play. And initially, there was a lot of pushback against that. And still, to a certain extent, you will have some art buyers out there who feel like artwork has to be framed, that's how artwork is supposed to be and how it's supposed to be experienced. But we are seeing, and certainly I have seen, and as you look around the broader art market, that there's just coming to be this broader and broader acceptance of unframed, intentionally unframed artwork being displayed in homes and even in museums and other settings, and it's become more widely accepted. And in fact, now I've been in homes where clients will tell me specifically, "Oh, I hate frames. I don't want to have any work that is in frames." And so for those of you that's kind of a question and a consideration, I would say that about 80 to 85% of the work that I'm showing in the gallery, two-dimensional work that is for the wall, is unframed, that does not have a traditional frame. And so that does not need to be an impediment to you getting your work out, that you're thinking in terms of presenting your work in that way. And I agree with some of the comments going through the chat, Gay, that your work, I think, lends itself to presentation in this way, that we wouldn't want to feel like there's an end or a sharp edge to that work, that it kind of extends out into the space. Let's take some comments from those of you who are here, and I've got a couple of reactions about consistency that I'll start with, and then I'll open it up to the group. And this is Alicia from Littleton, Colorado. She says, some of these are my favorite works of art that I've seen on a critique session. The first painting, called Dawn, does not seem to go with the others. And so there's a little bit of a question of, do all the works fit together that's introduced here? And you already mentioned a little bit that the process is different, and that first piece is a little simpler than other pieces. But I want to get reactions from the group as to whether you agree or disagree with that. Edna says, I'm so happy to see your work on Here at Last. Your insightful comments are always welcome and spot on during the critique group sessions. I'm so impressed with your work. It's beautiful and vital. To me, it seems well integrated over your various media. I would have no difficulty assigning all the work you showed us to the same artist. Beautifully done. So I've got kind of two counterpoints there. One where we hear it's very consistent, and another where there's a question mark that's raised. And so I want to throw that out. Let me pull us back out here. I'd like to get reactions from the group in terms of just your general reaction to what you're seeing in the work and your response to it, and what you think about the consistency of the 5 pieces that we've seen. And so if you want to hop in, throw a hand up in front of the camera or click on the hand icon down at the bottom of your screen, we'll get you in. Catherine, let me start with you. We'll hear a similar accent.
That's Catherine in England, right?
Oh, lovely to have an English woman on. Well done. Your work is truly wonderful.
Thank you.
I agree with somebody who said some of the best I've seen on a critique group. But I wanted to say that even this one that was The Breakfast with the Dawn, I think the palette overlaps enough with the other work for me to feel that it's your work. I understand that the style is different, but you have a unique palette.
Thank
Definitely
you.
yours.
Go ahead, Gay. What's your response?
Well, if you can see behind me, actually I don't know what you can see. Can you flash it up? Can you throw me on the screen? Because I don't know what I'm looking at. I can see human. Okay, well, over here, I think I'm pointing in the right direction. Let me take you there. No, this way, this way, this way. Those are some of the other Breakfast with the Dawns. So I gave you the most, if I could say in my own tiny way, for me, controversial Breakfast of the Dawns to simply get this, what I'm hearing. So thank you very, very much. This is my palette, although I have done some rather muted ones. And the backdrop to that is that when I was in the 50s and 60s in England, you'd hear this whimpering thing about women in the arts. Are you going to do these nice little pictures? You know,
pretty pictures.
Yeah, I know that one.
So I vowed I'd never paint in pastel colors. So I haven't until recently. Thank you. Catherine hears me. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
just made me think
Thank you, Catherine. Let me go to Diane if I can.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Gay.
Hi there.
Your work is wonderful. It's incredibly beautiful. I want to comment on that first one. This one here, Breakfast with the Dawn. You said that you work with your paintings from all sides, which, didn't bother me in any of the other ones except this one. This one, when I first saw it, it looked upside down.
Oh, interesting.
Because I saw a watery thing with something growing out of it. It definitely has a root. And I turned my head around and I thought, well, yeah, it looks better that way, or it's more logical to my mind, except when it turned around, I don't know what that would be coming out of the bottom.
Interestingly enough, this is one of those I did just in that position.
Oh, yeah.
That is how the sky goes in the dawn. Dark, lighter, blaring red kind of thing. But you're right. I probably could turn it upside down and have something springing to the light from the water. Now you mention it.
And Gay, I also wanted to comment on, like this one here, Gardens of Eternity. I just want to say something about the photography. Do you photograph these yourself? Because, it doesn't matter.
See.
It's all right. The left edge on a couple of them seem to fade away. And so it doesn't look like a consistent photograph.
Right. This one I did do myself. They are very difficult, even though I've got three lights, 3 professional lights. The size and the strictures I have to photograph them are very difficult. I think what I'm going to do, and I have heard this before, is in summer I'll take them outside.
Yeah, that's where I do.
I do it outside.
Come out. Are you in galleries, Gay?
No.
Diane jumps to the heart of the question. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Gay, actually, let's take ourselves there and talk a little bit. And I do want to get in a couple of other comments, but Talk a little bit about what your experience has been showing your work,
Okay.
selling the work, where you've had that exposure, and kind of where you'd like to be going with it.
Okay, I have been in galleries in the past, okay, but I have to say this, only one gallery ever sold anything. So it's not, my sales have largely been through, well, now the internet. Back when we were sending out portfolios in slide form and getting the mail back to us, I would say open studios, word of mouth, collectors collecting. I have sold throughout the years. And then when I started doing the installations, sometimes when the installations were being shown, which were a completely different set of subject material, people would want to know about my art and buy that way. Some of my largest paintings have been sold that way. So that's largely how I've been selling. And I do have a gallery in Newburyport who carries some of the small, for me, smaller things. But we're still plugging away at it. Thanks to Jason, I now have a coherent portfolio and my website's not too bad, I think. So that's been really helpful. And I usually do hear back from galleries eventually. So does that help?
Yeah, and talk a little bit. You mentioned that you've had buyers over the years, and you've had the experience of selling directly to them. Who are they? What do you notice that these buyers may have in common, or what are some of the key characteristics, or what are they responding to in your work?
Well, let me pick, usually it's something to do with their lives or their love of something. This last newsletter I sent out focused on a particular painting which had been requested by a collector of mine in California. She wanted to know more about it. So I did. Within 24 hours, it was sold.
Oh,
And the reason it was this person, the person who's buying it, loved the colors and the movement, and they reminded her of her son, who's since deceased, and the life they had together. So it's very evocative. And what I noticed in people who buy my work, there's a sense of a personal evocation. There's a memory or a joy. Like I have another collector who bought 2 trees of the painting, two of the tree paintings straight up because of her memory of childhood relationships with trees. So that's what I find. I find the activity draws people in, and something like the song here, it gets people thinking and imagining. That's generally what I hear, and how it inspires them to revisit the door. Somebody said that I'm going to get up in the morning and look at it.
Yeah.
I don't
Do you
usually
have
do
a
that.
sense, is the work going in, well, let's go with the stereotype. Let's start with the stereotype. Oh, it's abstracted, it's more contemporary. Therefore, it must be going into a very minimal contemporary home with lots of concrete and steel. And do you find that to be the case?
No, a wide variety, from very small apartments in California to rather lavish living areas that are newer to old. It runs the gamut. I don't know if anything's in a concrete slab of a place, but as far as I know, not. So no.
Yeah, and so I suspected that would be the case, and I thought it's important to mention here. As we think about the variety of different subject matter that we're all working in, from very traditional landscape or figurative work to more contemporary, abstracted work like gaze, to non-objective work. There can be this tendency to want to follow the stereotypes and to think, well, here I am, gay, creating these very, abstracted, multiform action paintings, and maybe I should be, because I'm doing that, I maybe should be thinking about galleries in contemporary art markets and galleries that cater to more contemporary clientele. And I would just be careful about prejudging that way, because what we have found is that people respond to a variety of different artwork. And just because I have a Tuscan style traditional European home does not mean that I'm going to have, Tuscan landscapes or traditional figurative work, that there can really be a variety of different interests. Humans are complex, and the work that they respond to and that evokes emotion in them can be very diverse. And so I wouldn't want us to feel like we end up boxing ourselves in because of the subject matter or our style, but to really keep an open mind in terms of giving people an opportunity to see the work in a variety of markets and galleries. I've had a couple of hands up for a few minutes. Let me go first to Terry, and then I'm going to go to Santana.
Can you hear me?
Yep, got you loud and clear.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gabe, because I think this is a great reminder of how lush our world is. I think sometimes, we forget to just look around at what's there, and your paintings. I'm sitting here getting a new idea for a painting of mine, and without without copying you, but I just want to bring a little more of that into mine as well. I too had a question about the first one, but I see that it's part of an ongoing series that you're working on. And I think what actually threw me was the title, because I went breakfast egg.
Well, you should.
So sorry about that.
You're close. You're close. I have an egg every morning with my breakfast. What can I say?
So I think I wouldn't have even put a picture in my mind if the title had been slightly different. And that's just me, but I love your colors and your size especially. And I agree with everybody who's been saying not to, that let the image continue in your mind without boxing it in with a frame. It's lovely. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry. Santana, let me go to you.
Oh, can I just say one thing?
Sure, Gay. Go ahead, and then we'll get to Santana.
And we don't have to, I don't want anybody to respond to it now, but while I remember it, my problem with this painting is it's so simple. And I don't want to end up being derivative. Anyway, we don't have to go there now. So Santana.
Oh, boy, yeah, that could unpack a lot of discussion. But Santana, let me go to you.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say, Gay, I love your story and all your work. And I'm another import from the UK. Lived in England many years, but I love your subject matter. Your Gardens of Eternity and your Persian Garden, I think are my favorites, but the song is very interesting. It reminded me of icons in the Russian Orthodox chapels, that you find on the islands in Greece, or the Greek Orthodox. I almost saw the Christ in that particular one, like real old monastic kind of, the books they used to do illumination drawings. So very interesting. But your work draws you in. It really has a spirit, a heart, a soul, and great beauty. So thank you very much for sharing.
Well,
I
thank you.
absolutely love it. And I could see you in Carmel. I don't know why you're not, except shipping, I think, could be daunting with big pieces like that.
Thank you very much. It's lovely.
Well, thank you.
It's one of the
Thank you
hopes I have.
so much, Kay. Yeah,
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So Santana, you raise a couple of interesting points about logistics, and I do want to kind of jump into that. But let me go to Anna Maria. I think I've got you as well. Good morning, Anna Maria.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Gay, your work has so much beautiful energy in it. It's wonderful. And I agree with everything that everyone has said about color and movement. It's beautiful. The only thing that I've been feeling all along is that I do feel that your garden work, it feels to me like a complete separate body of work. It's coherent, versus the Dawns would do a complete separate different body of work. They do not communicate in my mind. Also, the Breakfast with the Dawn right here, which is absolutely beautiful. The strokes are different versus the gardens. Your strokes are rounder, more organic, I would say. It just feels to me that they are two separate. They are both cohesive. Looking at what you're doing behind you on your wall, they're but two complete separate bodies of work. I don't know what you feel about that, or if it makes any sense.
Well, it's interesting you should say that. I don't see them as separate, but I do see that I'm in process of bringing them both together. That's what's happening to me now. So, so the organic nature, in fact, interesting enough, you can't really see it, but back behind me, down here, this horrible thing that you can see down there, is the beginning of two worlds coming together. These are the hands of the gardener, out of which all this stuff is sprouting. and the dawn is going to be sun. So I'm in that state that you're showing, where that you referenced, where I realized that I want to bring these worlds together, both the worlds of the objects that are lit by light and the light itself. So thank you. That is a good reminder to keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, no, and it's an interesting question that Anna Maria raises, that as an artist, you want to explore and you want to push boundaries, and you're taking inspiration from a variety of sources, and this is inevitably going to lead to that question. Okay, how do I bring it all together? How do I show it? Especially considering that there are going to be a variety of experiences that a viewer potentially could have, right? They could be in your studio and see a range of different works and some works in progress, and that would be one experience. They could be in a gallery and see a grouping of the work and see some progression from one piece to the next, and the interplay and compare and contrast the works there. And then ultimately, it's likely that they're going to buy a piece, maybe a couple of pieces as they become collectors, or several over time. And that's going to come into their home. And now the people who are going to experience it in their home are going to have a much more limited experience, right? They're going to be just seeing one or two pieces. And so it is kind of interesting to contemplate that dynamic, and to realize that each work has to be strong enough and confident enough to stand on its own, and to tell a complete story. But then I also need to think about that dynamic that's going to occur in a setting where I might be seeing multiple pieces, and that there may need to be some underlying narrative or something that helps tie that work together. And certainly, as we work on putting together a portfolio, we're thinking about that. We're thinking about the order of the images. If there is a leap, as we see from Breakfast with the Dawn to some of the garden pieces, that there is a feeling difference, we would want to give some transition between that work in the portfolio to help people both understand, but also to avoid having a sense of shock, maybe that could occur if it's too quick of a leap. And boy, the other complication is that this is something that's going to be constantly changing over the course of time as you're creating new works. How does this new work that I'm creating right now fit in with the broader body of work? And if you're not careful, you could tie yourselves up in knots trying to think about how all the work might or might not fit together. And we don't want to have that happen. And so if we can make some kind of connection in the work, in our mind and in our thought process, and in how our larger body of work is evolving, typically we can find a way to put it into a portfolio or to show it in a gallery in a way that's going to make sense to collectors.
I try to, both in the portfolio and on my website, which is easy on the website because I segment them. There are choices you can make about what series you want to go to, because I do paint in series. I do sort of group them on my portfolio so that you see like 6 of the same series and try and grade them so that you're going through. But you're right. It's I think it's important to show that there's something going on that links everything. Yeah,
absolutely. And in some ways, I wouldn't want you to be, I don't want you to disregard in your thought process as you're coming to a new piece to create, or you're taking on new inspiration. I wouldn't want you to disregard your portfolio, not think about the impact that a new piece could have there. But at the same time, I wouldn't want you to put so much weight into it that you feel a constraint on your creativity. That's the balancing act, I think, that every artist has to walk. And ultimately, you as the artist and me as a gallery owner, our job is to take your inspiration and what you're creating and make it work, right? To find a way to display it in such a way that it will work, that it'll make sense. Sometimes in the gallery, I do some selective editing where I don't always have all of it. In fact, I never have all of an artist's work up on the wall. I have some work in reserve, and I may be selective about which pieces are going up on the wall at the same time. There may be some times that I say, this piece needs to wait in the back for a little bit until a companion comes along. and can
I have
work
a-
with
yeah.
it, and that it
I have
can
a
then
friend who
make
knows-
sense in the grouping.
Who taught me right from the beginning. I was putting up one of my own small shows, and she says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm hanging them in order of events." And she says, "For heaven's sakes, let me do it."
Yeah,
that's
no,
what you're
and that's a
talking to.
really good point that, you
Yeah.
know, sometimes you as the artist, your logical process might not be quite as clear. Let me go, is it Jim? Do I have you? It's showing as Jim's. Let me pull you in. And we are quickly running out of time, but I want to get a few more comments.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to get my whole last name on there. Anyway, yeah, Jim Sopel's out of Cleveland, Ohio. I'm just curious on your process. Do you typically are these beginning with sketches, a conceptual thing, or is this something you're just going at a blank canvas with something in your mind's eye? Do you sketch a lot? Do you draw a lot, or do you just go right at these blank canvases?
I used to draw a lot, and I do doodle occasionally, but when I start the painting, it's a blank canvas and I go right into it. However, in my mind, I've prepared a series of things. Like when I did the Starry Garden, I had looked at pictures of the interstellar journeys. I wanted to capture something about them. And even the dawn, I see the dawn come up every day. And I remember, oh, that's what it looked like. And let's try that series of colors. So I'm not going onto a blank canvas with nothing in my head at all. And I don't rely on things coming out of the sky and zapping me now, like some people do. I literally know what I'm doing. And I have been drawing, and I have been trained in drawing since 1964. There isn't anything
When you
that
were just
I
2
believe
years
I
old.
cannot draw. So, you know, so I hear you, but my own approach is to just get at it. Because by that time, I've done enough thinking, for heaven's
Yeah.
sakes, let's go for it, you know.
Carol, let me let you in and get a comment as well, and then we are going to have to wrap.
Hi, Gay. Glorious work. I just feel this overall kind of healing energy, and it occurs to me I would easily see this like going into a boutique hotel. There's a few chains of the smaller boutique hotels where a lot of your work in one place would, as you move around, would create a complete mood and a kind of healing energy. And I don't know how to get there from here, but Jason,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
no, and
thank you. I just want to talk to, I was given an entire restaurant way back. He came in and he said, I want this many paintings and this size, and this is where they're going, and this is the mood I want. And it was a family, he was a great, lovely cook from Lebanon. And I did his restaurant, and he just closed recently, and he has kept all the work. He said, after my work went up, he said, they never had to decorate again. They had bridal people going in front of it. So I hear you.
yeah,
And it was really, gave me a sense of what you're talking about. So thank you.
Right.
yeah, no, it is, and we'll kind of wrap on this, but there is, as you begin working at a larger scale, I encourage all of us here to think about pushing our boundaries and moving into larger works. There is a different effect that a 6 by 8 foot canvas or a 4 by 6 canvas has in a space than a smaller work will have. You know, in a lot of ways, a smaller work will become part of a space, and a larger work makes a space.
Yeah.
At least that's been my experience as I've worked with clients and even in the gallery. And so it could be a very powerful effect to do that. And, you know, not every client wants that. Some clients want work that's going to fit into their home and become a part of the home, but other clients are looking for work that is really definitive in the space. I think the last thing I'll just mention is, along with that, as we talk about the scale of work, and I think Santana mentioned it earlier, that you have to start thinking about some of the logistics that are involved in shipping artwork and getting it into a space and hanging and all those. I wouldn't, if you have a desire to work large, as Gay clearly has, I just would not let those logistics be a constraining factor on your work, because those kinds of issues can all be worked through. And yes, there is some expense involved in moving larger canvases, but not as much as you might be afraid that there is. And there are going to be ways to work through those things. So that's going to lead to future conversations for sure. But I want to, Gay, again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you
for this
all.
session, for sharing your background
fun.
and your work. It's been a real pleasure for us to be able to experience your work.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Wonderful feedback. Thank you.
Yes,
Jason.
and thanks everyone for joining us, for your comments and feedback. Of course, we'll be back here next